and welcome everyone to the Target UPSC 2024 MCQs practice series. I'm Pragya with you today. So in our today's discussion, we will be discussing the MCQs from the subject of polity. Let us begin our today's session. So the first question of our today's session is, consider the following statements with reference to the ordinance making power of the Indian President. And where exactly is this ordinance making power of the Indian President mentioned? It is mentioned under Article 123 of our Indian Constitution. So your statement number 1 is, ordinance making power of the President is a discretionary power. Your statement number 2 is, ordinance issued by the President has the same force and effect as an act of the Parliament. Your statement number 3 is, ordinance issued by the President should be laid before Lok Sabha only. And your statement number 4 is, ordinance ceases to operate on the expiry of 6 months from the date of its issue. So which of the statements given above are not correct in nature? Your options are, option A is 1 and 2 only, option B is 1 and 3 only, option C is 3 and 4 only, and your option D is 1, 3 and 4 only. So the correct answer of this question will be option D. 1, 3 and 4 only statements are incorrect in nature. The President of India exercises his or her powers in the legislative sphere as well. And this is where the Indian Constitution shifts from the US Constitution, is different from the US Constitution in relation to the doctrine of separation of powers. Doctrine of separation of powers. So what is this doctrine of separation of power? So we are all aware that there are 3 organs of the government: legislature, executive and judiciary. And the doctrine of separation of powers states that they have their own powers in their respective sphere and they cannot encroach on each other's sphere. So this doctrine of separation of power is very strict in the Constitution of the United States of America. But if you talk about the Indian Constitution, they are not in the watertight compartment. We follow a very flexible approach. In the normal circumstances, they cannot encroach. But whenever there is an emergency circumstance, yes, they can fill the void. They can encroach upon each other's functions to fill the void or to fulfill that emergency situation. So the most important legislative power of the President is that of promulgating an ordinance. The Constitution of India under Article 123, as I mentioned, empowers the President that he or she shall have the power to legislate by ordinances when ordinary legislation through parliamentary enactment on the subject is not possible immediately. That means there has been an emergency situation, the Parliament action by making an legislation is not possible at that point of time, and this is where the ordinance making power of the Indian President comes into picture. And this power, as I have said, is mentioned under Article 123 of an Indian Constitution. Such legislation has the same force and effect as an act of the Indian Parliament, but for a very temporary period. However, this ordinance making power should be exercised in accordance with few limitations. So let us understand what are these few limitations. So the first limitation is, an ordinance can be issued only on those subjects on which the Parliament is authorized to legislate. That means it is coterminous with the parliamentary legislation powers. Okay, you cannot legislate on those subjects, you cannot promulgate an ordinance on those subjects on which the Parliament has no legislative power. It is bound by the same constitutional limitations as an act of the Parliament. That means it cannot violate or abridge our fundamental rights. An ordinance can be issued only if either or both the houses of the Parliaments are not in session. That means an ordinance can be promulgated even if one house is in session, since a bill can only be passed by both the houses. Considering this, it can be said that the Ordinance is not a means of parallel legislation of the Parliament. The President can promulgate an ordinance only when he is satisfied that the situation has arisen that renders it necessary for him to take an immediate action. Every such ordinance promulgated by the President must be laid before both the houses of the Parliament within 6 weeks. So the period is 6 weeks and not 6 months. From the date on which they meet after the recess, or they shall cease to operate. They will also cease to operate in case resolutions disapproving the ordinance are passed by both the houses, and that is why your statement number 3 is not correct. An ordinance can also be brought down before the expiry of a 6-week term by parliamentary disapproval if both the houses pass a resolution to that effect. Also, the President may withdraw the ordinance at any time if he deems it necessary to do so. Therefore, the maximum duration for which the ordinance can survive without parliamentary approval is 6 months and 6 weeks. If approved otherwise, it becomes a law. Ordinance promulgation power of the President is not a discretionary power. He has to act in aid of the Council of Ministers. He is bound by the aid of and advice of the Council of Ministers. Indian President does not have any discretionary power, and that is why your statement number 1 is also not correct, and hence the correct answer for this question is option D, 1, 3 and 4 only. Now let us proceed to discuss another question of our today's discussion. So the question is, consider the following statements with reference to the process of impeachment of the President of India. So your statement number 1 is, the President can be removed from the office on ground of violation of Indian Constitution. So where exactly is this part of impeachment of President of India is given in our Indian Constitution? It is given under Article 61 of our Indian Constitution. Your statement number 2 is, the Constitution of India defines the meaning of the phrase violation of the Indian Constitution. Your statement number 3 is, the process of impeachment can only be started in the Lok Sabha. Your statement number 4 is, passing an impeachment resolution requires the support of 2/3 of the members present and voting in the House. So which of these statements given above is are correct? Your option A is 1, 2 and 3 only. Option B is 2, 3 and 4 only. Option C is 1 and 2 only. And your option D is 1 only. So your correct answer is going to be option D. Statement 1 only is correct. The Constitution of India provides for the removal of President from his office before the expiry of his term by the process of impeachment. According to Article 61 Clause 1 of our Indian Constitution, the only ground specified for initiating the process of impeachment is the violation of the Constitution. If you talk about statement number 2, no, this term violation of the Constitution has not been defined in our Indian Constitution, and that is why this statement is incorrect in nature. Impeachment is a quasi-judicial process which can be initiated by either house of the Parliament, and that is why your statement number 3 is also not correct, because it is written it can only be started in the Lok Sabha. So this is a clue. Whenever you see these negative kind of words, can only, Lok Sabha only, so you can follow the elimination method. All of these negative statements are untrue in nature generally. A sitting president can be charged with the violation of Constitution if a resolution to that effect is moved in writing and signed by not less than 1/4 of the total membership of the proposing house. However, such a resolution can only be moved after giving 14 days notice in advance to the president against whom the charges are levied. The resolution, once adopted, is to be passed by a majority of not less than 2/3. It is not 1/3, it is 2/3, okay, of the total membership of that house, after which it is sent to the other house which investigates the charges. During such an investigation, the president has the right to appear and be represented. Okay, and that is why your statement number 4 is not correct. After such investigation, if the other house as well sustains the charges and passes a resolution to that effect by a majority of not less than 2/3 of the total membership of the house, then the president stands removed from his office with immediate effect. And that is why your correct answer is option D, statement number 1 only. Now let us move to another question of our today's discussion. Your question is, consider the following statements with respect to the election of the president. So your statement 1 is, all the members of both the houses of parliament are part of the electoral college that is responsible for the election of the president. Your statement number 2 is, value of vote of an MLA, that is member of state legislative assembly, is equal to that of an MLC, that means the member of state legislative council. So which of these statements given above are not correct? Okay, your options are, option A is 1 only, option B is 2 only, option C is both 1 and 2, and option D is neither 1 nor 2. So the correct answer is going to be option B. Both of statements 1 and 2 are incorrect in nature. The President of India is indirectly elected by an electoral college and not by the people directly. The electoral college consists of the elected members of, firstly, both the houses of the parliament, that is the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha, and that is why your statement number 1 is not correct. Legislative assemblies of the states, legislative assemblies of the Union Territories of Delhi and Puducherry, and now the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir as well. The nominated members of both the houses of the parliament, the nominated members of the legislative assembly of states, the members both elected and nominated of the legislative councils of the state in case of a bicameral legislature, and the nominated members of the legislative assemblies of Union Territories of Delhi and Puducherry and Jammu and Kashmir do not participate in the election of the president. Also, if the legislative assembly of a state is dissolved, its members do not qualify to vote in the presidential elections, and hence your statement number 2 is also not correct in nature. The scheme of election is based on the system of proportional representation by means of single transferable vote. Single transferable vote. And the voting is done by secret ballot. Secret ballot. This system ensures that the successful candidate is returned by the absolute majority of votes. A candidate, in order to be declared elected to the office of president, must secure a fixed quota of votes. Fixed quota of votes. The Constitution lays down a definite manner in which the members of the Electoral College cast their vote. This is to ensure uniformity in the representation of different states and to maintain parity between the Union and the states in the election of the President of India. The values of vote of MLAs and MPs are determined using the following formula. So, in this way, the president is deemed to be the representative of the Republic of India as a whole, along with the representative of people in the different states, and therefore your option C, that is both 1 and 2 are is the correct answer for this question, because both of these statements are incorrect in nature. Moving forward to the next question of our today's discussion. So your question is, match the following: pardoning power and implication. So option A, pardon, substitution of one form of punishment for a lighter form. Respite, stay on execution of a sentence for a temporary period. Reprieve, awarding a lesser sentence in place of the one originally awarded. and your option D is commutation, completely absolving the convict of all sentences, punishments and disqualifications. So choose the correct answer using the codes given below. Option A for A 4, B 3, C 2 and D 1. Then option B for A number 4, B number 2, C number 3 and D number 1. Option C for A number 2 statement, B number 1, number for C number 3 and D number 4, and option D is for A statement 1, for B statement 3, C 2 and D 4. So the correct answer is going to be option A 4 3 2 1. That means for statement number A, this fourth option is correct. To pardon means to completely absolve the convict of all sentences, punishments and disqualifications. For your statement number B, option 3 is correct. That means to respite is to award a lesser sentence in place of the one originally awarded. For your option C, option 2 is correct. That means reprieve means to stay on execution of a sentence for a temporary period, and option D is number 1, substitution of one form of punishment for a lighter form. So article 72 of our Indian Constitution grants pardoning power to the President of India. Pardoning powers. And to whom are they granted? President of India under Article 72 of our Indian Constitution. And these include pardon. It removes both the sentence and the conviction and completely absolves the convict from all sentences, punishments and disqualifications. Remission. Remission implies reducing the period of sentence without changing its character. For example, a sentence of rigorous imprisonment for 2 years may be remitted to rigorous imprisonment for the period of 1 year. Respite. It denotes awarding a lesser sentence in place of one originally awarded due to some special fact, such as physical disability of a convict or the pregnancy of a women offender. Reprieve. It implies a stay of the execution of a sentence, especially that of death sentence, for a temporary period. Its purpose is to enable the convict to have time to seek pardon or commutation from the President of India. Then commutation of the sentence. It denotes the substitution of one form of punishment for a lighter form. For example, a death sentence may be commuted to rigorous imprisonment, which in turn may be commuted to a simple imprisonment. So basically Article 72 of our Indian Constitution grants the pardoning powers to the President of India. Now let us discuss another question of our today's discussion. So the question is, consider the following statements with reference to the office of Vice President of India. Your statement number 1 is, the term of the Vice President is 5 years. Your statement number 2 is, the Vice President can be impeached on grounds for violation of the Constitution. So which of these statements given above are correct? Your option A is 1 only. Your option B is 2 only. Your option C is both 1 and 2. And option D is neither 1 nor 2. So the correct answer for this question is going to be option A. Statement number 1 only is correct. The term of the office of the Vice President is generally 5 years. However, the term may terminate earlier by resignation. And to whom this resignation is given? It is given to the President of India. So both the President and the Vice President of India resign by giving resignation to each other. In case of a President, he will resign by giving a resignation to the Vice President of India. And in the case of a Vice President of India, he will resign by giving his resignation to the President of India. Okay, and the term may also end earlier by removal procedure. So the Vice President is also removed from his office, can be removed. The Vice President can be removed by a resolution of the Rajya Sabha. Why Rajya Sabha? Because he is the ex officio chairman of the Rajya Sabha, passed by an absolute majority. What kind of majority is required? It is absolute majority. that is a majority of the total members of the house and agreed to by the Lok Sabha. So final call will be of Lok Sabha. The Lok Sabha has to agree with the decision of the Rajya Sabha. To move such a resolution, a 14 days notice period is to be given to the Vice President of India, and there is no need of impeachment for the removal of the Vice President. Further, the Constitution does not mention the grounds for his removal, and that is why your statement number 2 is incorrect in nature. Let us discuss question number 6 of our today's discussion. So, which of the following statements is not correct about the executive powers of the President of India? Your statement number A is all executive actions of the Government of India are formally taken in the name of the President. Then your option B is the President appoints the Prime Minister and other ministers. They hold office during his pleasure. Your statement number 3 is the President can make rules specifying the manner in which the orders and other instruments made and executed in his name shall be authenticated. And your statement number D is he appoints the chairman and the members of the Union Public Service Commission, also known as the UPSC, as well as the chairman and members of the State Public Service Commissions. So the correct answer of this question is going to be option D. That means he has the power to appoint the chairman and the members of the UPSC as well as the State Public Service Commissions. So the administrative or executive powers of the President can be briefly summarized as follows. He/she makes the rules for the convenient transaction of business of the Union Government and for allocation of the said business among the ministers. He or she specifies the manner in which the orders and other instruments made and executed in his or her name shall be authenticated. The Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers are appointed by the President and they hold office during his or her pleasure. He or she can require the Prime Minister to submit for consideration of the Council of Ministers any matter on which a decision has been taken by a minister but which has not been considered by the council. If he or she has the power to appoint and remove other constitutional dignitaries, including the Attorney General for India, the Comptroller and Auditor General of India, the Chief Election Commissioner and other election commissioners, the chairman and the members of the UPSC and Joint Public Service Commissions, the governors of state and the chairman and members of the Finance Commission, among others. He or she shall appoint the Chief Justice of India and the judges of the Supreme Court and the High Courts. While making such appointments, the Constitution requires him or her to consult the Chief Justice of India other than his own appointment and such other judges of the Supreme Court and the High Court as he may deem necessary. Let me know the system by which the judges in our Indian judiciary are appointed. He or she can appoint a commission to investigate into the conditions of scheduled castes, scheduled tribes and other backward classes. He or she can appoint an interstate council to promote center-state and interstate cooperation. He/she directly administers the union territories through administrators appointed by him or her, also known as the LGs or the lieutenant governors. He or she can declare any area as a scheduled area and has powers with respect to the administration of the scheduled and tribal areas. So all of these were the functions of the President of India, and the correct answer is option D. Moving forward to the next question of our today's discussion. So the question is, consider the following statement with reference to the office of Vice President of India. Your statement number 1 is, Vice President can be removed after a resolution is passed by absolute majority in both the houses of the Indian Parliament. Your statement number 2 is, the Vice President can resign from his office at any time by addressing the resignation letter to the Chief Justice of India. Your statement number 3 is, the office is modelled on the lines of the British Vice President. So which of these statements given above are correct? Your option A is 1 and 3 only. Option B is 1 and 2 only. Option C is 3 only. And option D is none of the above. So the correct answer for this question is going to be option D. None of these statements are correct. The post of Vice President in India is modelled on the lines of the Vice President of USA and not the British Vice President. The term of office of the Vice President is generally 5 years. However, he can resign from his office at any time by addressing the resignation to the President. As I have previously explained in that question also, that both of them resign by giving resignation to each other. That is why your statement number 2 is incorrect in nature. The term may also end earlier by removal procedure. The Vice President can be removed by a resolution of the Rajya Sabha and not both the houses of the Parliament. And that is why your statement number 1 is also incorrect in nature. Okay, and the majority in this case is absolute majority and agreed to by the Lok Sabha. To move such a resolution, a 14 days notice is to be given, and that is why none of the statements that are given in this question are correct in nature. Moving forward to the next question of our today's discussion. So the question is, which one of the following about the Parliament of India is not correct? Option A, the Parliament consists of the President, the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. Your option B is 1/3 of the members of the Rajya Sabha retire every 3rd year. Your statement C is the Rajya Sabha cannot be dissolved, and your option D, some members of the Rajya Sabha are nominated by the Indian President. So the correct statement which is not correct in nature is statement number B. The Parliament of India consists of 3 parts, namely the President, the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. Most of you get confused here that the President is not the part of the Parliament. In fact, President is the part of the Parliament, and where it has been mentioned in our Indian Constitution, you'll let me know in the comment section below. Rajya Sabha is a permanent house and therefore it cannot be dissolved. Okay, and however 1/3 of the members of the Rajya Sabha retire after every 2nd year, and that is why your statement number B is incorrect. A member who is elected for a full term serves for a period of 6 years. The election held to fill a vacancy arising otherwise than by retirement of a member on the expiration of his or her term office is called by-election. The present strength of the Rajya Sabha is 245, out of which 233 are representative of the states and the union territories, and 12 members are nominated by the President of India. The members nominated by the President are persons having special knowledge or practical experience in respect of matters like literature, science, art and social service. That is why your statement number B is incorrect in nature. Let us move forward to discuss another question of our today's discussion. So the question is, which reference to the Attorney General for India. Attorney General for India is mentioned under which article of the Indian Constitution? You will let me know in the comment section below. Consider the following statements. Your statement number 1 is, he has the right to speak and to take part in the proceedings of both the houses of Parliament, but without a right to vote. Now statement number 2 is, he cannot sit in the joint session of the Parliament. Your statement number 3 is, he is not eligible for the privileges and immunities that are available to a member of the Parliament. So which of these statements given above are correct? Your option A is 1 and 2 only. Option B is 1 and 3 only. Option C is 1 only, and option D is 3 only. So yes, your option number 1 is only correct. So your correct answer is option C. Statement number 1 is only correct. So under the Constitution, Article 76 Clause 3. So I have revealed the answer which I have asked for the question. that Attorney General for India is mentioned under Article 76 of our Indian Constitution. States that in performance of his duties, the Attorney General shall have the right of audience in all courts in the territory of India. In addition to this, he has special privileges with respect to the Parliament. He is entitled to the privileges available to any member of the Parliament, and that is why your statement number 3 is incorrect in nature. In accordance with Article 88 of the Constitution, unlike his British counterpart, the Attorney General of India is not a part of the Cabinet, but he has the right to speak and take part in the proceedings of both the houses of the Parliament or their joint sitting and any committee of the Parliament of which he may be named a member. However, in such a capacity also, he does not possess a right to vote, and that is why option 1 is correct. Okay. Furthermore, he is not debarred from private legal practice, as he does not fall under the category of the servants of Government of India. Okay. Therefore, the correct answer of this question is going to be option C, statement 1 only. Now, let us discuss another question of our today's discussion. So, the question is with reference to the Solicitor General, consider the following statements. Your statement number 1 is the office of the Solicitor General is created by the Indian Constitution. Your statement number 2 is Solicitor General is not considered a member of the Union Cabinet. Which of these statements given above are correct? Okay, your options are option A is 1 only, option B is 2 only, option C is both 1 and 2, and option D is neither 1 nor 2. So, the correct answer for this question is going to be option B. Statement number 2 is only correct. Your statement number 1 is not correct, because the office of the Solicitor General of India is a statutory post. It is not mentioned under any kind of constitution, okay, in any article of the Constitution. So, it is a statutory post and not a constitutional post. We just have one constitutional post, that is the Attorney General of India, and in the states it is the Advocate General of the state. So, Attorney General for India is a constitutional post, while the posts of the Solicitor General and the additional Solicitor Generals are statutory in nature, and that is why your statement number 1 is not correct. Solicitor General is appointed by the Government of India for a period of 3 years. The work of Solicitor General is confined to appear in courts on behalf of the Government of India. He does not tender legal advice to the Government of India. Neither the Solicitor General nor the Attorney General is considered to be part of the Union Cabinet to look after the legal matters at the government level. A separate law minister in the Cabinet is created. So, they are not the part of the Cabinet. On the other hand, if you look at the British Constitution, the Attorney General of India is a part of the British Cabinet. So, this is a stark difference between the Indian Constitution and the Constitution of the UK. Now, let us discuss a practice question of our today's session. So, the question is, Vice President is elected by an electoral college consisting of number 1, elected members of the Lok Sabha, number 2, nominated members of the Rajya Sabha, option 3, statement 3 is elected members of the Rajya Sabha, and your statement 4 is nominated members of the Rajya Sabha. So, select the correct answer using the quotes given below. Option A 1, 2 and 3 only, option B 2, 3 and 4 only, option C 1, 3 and 4 only, and your option D is 1, 2, 3, 4. All of these statements are correct, and this answer will be given by you to me in the comment box below. I hope this session was insightful for you. If you have any feedback regarding this session, you can drop it in the comment box below. If you liked today's discussion and found it to be helpful, kindly like the video and subscribe to our channel for more such interesting updates. Till then, keep practicing. We will be discussing for some more MCQs in our next episode. Thank you.
For more informative content, like, share and subscribe, and do not forget to press the bell icon to get the notifications.